She said I didn't feel things deeply enough. So she started recording our arguments, not for therapy, but for control. Playback became punishment. Until one day, I stopped talking and started recording too. Let's just say what I caught. It didn't teach me empathy. It taught me exactly where to stick the knife. My name's Nate. I'm a 34-year-old software engineer, decently paid, introverted, not exactly the type to blow up in a fight. I thought that made me a good partner, calm, rational, patient. But to my wife, Mara, it made me emotionally unavailable. She started therapy last year, not for us, for herself. At least that's what I thought. But therapy turned into TED Talks. TED Talks turned into TikToks. And suddenly, I was a villain in her healing journey. Every disagreement became a case study in my alleged lack of empathy. So she started recording me, without my consent, to help me grow, she said. Back then, I didn't know where this would lead. But if you stay with me, you'll see why I stopped giving second chances. And maybe you'll want to send this to someone who thinks manipulation is a form of love. Because it only gets darker from here. You ever been blindsided by your own voice? It happened on a Tuesday night. We were in the kitchen, me rinsing dishes, her perched at the counter like some kind of self-satisfied therapist. She tapped her phone screen and said, "Just listen for a second." Then I heard it. My voice, saying something about how I didn't get why she always made everything so dramatic. Out of context? Sure. But cold? Yeah, it did sound cold. Detached. Like I was explaining a broken printer, not responding to my wife crying over a missed brunch. I froze, dish still in hand. "What is this?" I asked. She smiled. I swear to God, smiled, like this was some kind of breakthrough. "It's from last weekend," she said gently. "I thought if you could hear yourself, you might finally understand how you come off sometimes. You don't need to defend it. Just sit with it." Sit with it? What am I, a toddler in a timeout? I felt my jaw tighten. Not because I thought I was perfect. I know I can be logical to a fault. But secretly recording me during a fight? That wasn't empathy. That was strategy. You recorded me without telling me? Her smile faltered. It's not about the recording. It's about growth. Growth. God, I hate how therapy words get weaponized. She'd been seeing this trauma-informed coach for a few months, and now everything was about space, wounding, self-awareness. But the only one being dissected in this marriage was me. "I just wanted you to hear what I hear," she said, now playing the victim, voice soft. "Because I think you're better than this version of yourself." I didn't say much after that. I didn't storm out, didn't raise my voice. I just finished the dishes, dried my hands, and went to bed early. But that night, lying there next to her, her phone face down on the charger, her breathing calm, and even something twisted in my gut. It wasn't just anger. It was violation. And I realized, if she could do that without blinking, what else was she willing to do? So no, I didn't confront her. I didn't shout. I didn't beg for context. I just started watching. Because if this was the game she wanted to play, recording and reviewing emotions like courtroom evidence, then fine. Two can record that game. The dinner was supposed to be casual, just Mara, me, her best friend Lila, and Lila's boyfriend Matt. A little wine, some risotto, and the illusion of adult friendship. I wasn't in the mood, but I went along with it. Mara had insisted. "You've been so distant lately," she said. "It'd be good for us to be social." Translation: perform normalcy in front of people so she could claim I was the one with the mask. So I played along. I smiled, poured drinks, made polite jokes. And then it happened. Somewhere between the salad and the main course, Lila turned to Mara and said, "Did you ever show him that one clip, the stop making everything a crisis one?" My fort paused midair. Mara chuckled. "God, no. That one would kill him. He sounded like a robot having a meltdown." Lila burst out laughing. I swear, I made my therapist listen to it. She said it was textbook deflection. They didn't even notice I was sitting right there. I glanced over. Mara caught my expression. For a second, her face froze. But then she leaned into it, like I was the one being oversensitive. "Oh, come on," she said, placing her hand on mine. "You've got to admit, it's kind of funny. You always say you want feedback. Right. Like asking not to be humiliated in front of guests was a sign of emotional immaturity." I stood up, slow and calm. Took my plate. Walked it to the sink. "I've got a headache," I said. "Gonna lie down for a bit." Mara didn't follow. She knew better. She had an audience to maintain. I went to the bedroom, shut the door, and sat in silence. That tight, cold silence you only get when betrayal wears a familiar face. Not only had she recorded me, she'd turned me into a joke, a morality podcast for her friends. And something clicked in that moment. That little voice in my gut, the one I used to ignore out of compassion, said, that wasn't a one-time slip. That's who she is now. So I did something I never thought I'd do in my own marriage. I opened my laptop, ordered a tiny digital recorder, the kind journalists use when sources won't talk on the record. Discreet, high quality, rechargeable. Because if she was going to keep treating our conversations like case studies, I was going to make sure I had my own notes. Not for revenge. Not yet. Just for protection. Because Mara wasn't teaching me empathy. She was teaching me that some people only understand your boundaries when you hit record. The recorder arrived on a Thursday, no markings on the box, just a plain brown envelope. Inside was a sleek little thing, no bigger than a pen cap. No blinking light. No sound indicator. Just a switch. It felt like crossing a line. But then again, so did broadcasting my pain to her friends. From that day on, I became someone else. Not outwardly. Outwardly, I was still Nate. Mild, soft-spoken, the steady husband. But inside, I was cataloging. Watching. Waiting. I started small. Left the recorder running when we had a check-in conversation. Mara's favorite new ritual. She would light a candle like she was summoning spirits and ask things like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how seen do you feel in this relationship? Then, no matter what I said, she'd pivot back to how she didn't feel safe when I shut down emotionally. Recording helped me stay quiet, focused, detached. And the more I listened back, the more I realized. It wasn't just me she was manipulating. It was the narrative. She edited herself in real time, like a social media influencer live-streaming her growth arc. If I got upset, I was dysregulated. If I stayed calm, I was emotionally distant. If I asked a question, weaponized curiosity. Everything I said was either invalid or evidence of my inner brokenness. But here's the thing, I wasn't the broken one. I was just the mirror she didn't want to look into. The recordings piled up, hours of her twisting, reframing, gaslighting. One night, she cornered me in the hallway over a petty argument about laundry. You said you'd fold the towels, she snapped. I was in the middle of work. I'll get to it after dinner. That's not the point, Nate. It's the pattern. You always delay. You always disappear when something real comes up. And then, this part chilled me. She lowered her voice, tilted her head slightly, and said, I need you to hear how dismissive you sound. It wasn't just control. It was theater. I clipped that quote and saved it in a folder marked Mirror Therapy. By now, I'd also started syncing my backups to a private cloud, separate from our shared devices. I even made text transcripts, just in case. Because I didn't know yet where this was going. But I knew one thing for sure. She wasn't my partner anymore. She was a case study in how empathy, when twisted, becomes a mask for cruelty. And if she was going to keep collecting moments to use against me, I was going to start collecting the truth. It was a lazy Sunday when I got my first real hit. Mara was pacing the living room, phone pressed to her ear, half laughing, half whispering. I had my recorder tucked behind a stack of books on the shelf. She didn't know I was home early. I'd faked a client emergency to duck out of brunch with her friends. I swear, it's like training a golden retriever, she said. Pause. Laughter. No, seriously. I just mirror some feelings back at him, drop a tear or two, and boom. Dishes are done, laundry folded, he's begging to apologize. My stomach turned. You just have to make them feel like they're failing emotionally. That's the trick. Once they're ashamed, you can get them to do anything. Silence. Then, no, he doesn't suspect a thing. If anything, I think he feels grateful. I quietly slipped back out the door. Later that night, I listened again. And again, I transcribed every word. Labeled the file, obediencetraining.mp3. Something in me hardened after that. Up until then, part of me still believed this was salvageable, that maybe, deep down, Mara really did think she was helping. But this was cruelty dressed in self-help language. She was proud of it. It wasn't about healing. It was about control. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I added a new rule to my routine. Every time we had a check-in, a disagreement, or even a suspicious silence, I recorded it. I kept everything organized. Dates, topics, timestamps, keywords. You'd be surprised how fast emotional coaching starts to sound like psychological warfare when you hear it with clean audio and no interruptions. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came 2 days later, when I found a text thread between her and her sister, Jen. Screenshots, shared clips, captioned with phrases like, "He sounds so pathetic here, lol. This one's my favorite. Watch his face fall when I say I'm not mad, just disappointed." I wasn't just her project. I was her entertainment. She was feeding off it, like the empathy version of a bully. That night, I sat at my desk, staring at my screen for a long time. Then I created a new folder. Encrypted, backed up twice, labeled it for legal use. Because this wasn't just toxic anymore. This was documented psychological abuse. And if she wanted to weaponize compassion, I was going to weaponize the truth. There's a moment when pain turns into purpose. For me, that moment came after a weird Wednesday. Mara had been acting extra sweet, packed me lunch, kissed my forehead, asked if I wanted her to book us a couple's retreat. That alone would have raised flags. But then I noticed her phone screen as she walked past, open to a Maps app. A red pin. Not a therapist's office. A condo complex on the other side of town. I waited until she left for her session, then checked our shared location history. She'd been visiting that address every Thursday for the last 6 weeks. I screenshotted it, cross-referenced the calendar entries. The dots connected way too cleanly. So I followed her. Stayed 3 cars behind, engine low. Parked around the corner. Waited. Watched. She didn't go into a clinic. She buzzed into a unit on the 3rd floor. And 45 minutes later, I saw him. Tall, athletic, barefoot, holding a wine glass. She opened the door for him in yoga pants and a smile I hadn't seen in months. That was my confirmation. But what I needed was proof. So the next week, I came prepared. Same setup, car parked, camera ready, mic on. But this time, I wore an old hoodie she wouldn't recognize and crept up the back stairwell. Her car was parked right outside. No doubt it was her. I waited until I heard voices behind the door, then placed the recorder just outside and leaned in. I only caught fragments. But it was enough. "He still thinks you're going to therapy?" Laughter. Glass clinking. "Please. He's so desperate to be the good husband. It's almost cute." Then, her voice, the voice that used to say she loved me, dropped into a sultry whisper. "I just keep giving him emotional homework. He eats it up." I didn't cry. Not then. My hands were too busy pressing record. That night, I synced everything. GPS logs, audio clips, a video of her walking in, timestamped with her calendar event marked Dr. Feldman, trauma processing. Funny thing, I actually looked up Dr. Feldman. Real guy. But she hadn't seen him in months. Instead, she was processing trauma with a guy who wore cologne strong enough to smell from the hallway. By now, the case wasn't just about gaslighting. It was about fraud, deception, adultery, and I hadn't even started my counterattack. But I will say this, sitting there in that dark stairwell, knees aching, heart steady, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Control. I booked the consultation under a fake name. Didn't want anything showing up in insurance records or shared mail. Used a prepaid phone. Rented a co-working office just to take the Zoom call from a neutral IP address. Paranoid? Maybe. But I'd seen how Mara weaponized privacy. The attorney's name was Daniel Brooks, low profile, discreet, and sharp as glass. He listened patiently as I laid it out. The secret recordings, the manipulation, the affair masquerading as therapy. When I finished, there was a pause. Then he leaned forward and said, "You've got her." I blinked. "Legally? In your state?" "Yes. 2-party consent for audio recordings. She recorded you without permission. That's illegal surveillance, especially if used for leverage." I nodded. "And the affair?" "Marital misconduct," he said flatly. "If you've got timestamps and proof, which you clearly do, and you've got a prenup with a fidelity clause, she's in breach." I pulled up the file I'd labeled Mirror Therapy. Played a short clip. She was laughing. Again, calling me safe, like an emotional lab rat. Comparing me to a therapy dog. Brooks raised an eyebrow. She knew she was being cruel. "That matters." He laid it out clean. "If I filed for divorce under breach of prenup, I'd retain full financial control of joint assets. I could make a case for mental cruelty and emotional abuse, especially with the recordings, text messages, and witness testimonies. And best of all, if she tried to spin it publicly, I could counter every narrative with her own words. But timing is everything, he warned. Do this too early, and she'll cry therapy. Too late, and she might move assets or delete things. I asked, what would you do if it were you? He leaned back. Build a quiet, airtight case. Smile at dinner. Keep syncing files. And when you're ready, hit her so hard with truth that no PR spin can save her. I left that meeting clearer than I'd felt in months. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about clarity and justice. So I kept collecting. Every clip, every message, every lie disguised as spiritual growth. She had no idea. In fact, that very night, Mara came into the bedroom wearing my favorite hoodie, the one she usually called too clingy. She curled up next to me and whispered, I know I've been hard on you lately, but you're doing better. I feel like you're finally opening up. I kissed her forehead, smiled, said, thanks, babe. I'm just trying to meet you where you are. And inside, I was already planning the day I'd meet her where she put me, in court. You ever watch someone rehearse their own downfall and smile while they do it? That's what the next 2 weeks were like. Mara thought she had me exactly where she wanted. Softened, submissive, evolving. She started using words like proud of your growth and you're finally integrating emotional feedback. I nodded, took notes, even printed worksheets from online therapy blogs just to keep the illusion alive. It was performance art, and I played my role like a pro. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, I was busy finalizing the kill shot. I bought a second recorder, this one with voice activation and automatic cloud backup. Installed a legal notes app with encryption and timestamps. Created a burner Dropbox account. Started printing hard copies of the most damning transcriptions. Labeled them in folders. Emotional coercion. Mocking behavior. Infidelity evidence. Violation of consent. I wasn't just building a case. I was building a story. One the court would believe, because she told it herself. I even found an old iPad she forgot was synced to her messages. It had dozens of saved audio clips, some labeled like trophies. One said, The Breakdown, May 4th. She'd titled my worst night like a podcast episode. I forwarded it all to my attorney. The best part? She started prepping for a couple's retreat. We should go somewhere quiet, she said, sliding her hand into mine across the dinner table. No tech, just us and nature. Reconnect. I nearly laughed. She wanted me off the grid. Emotionally raw. No witnesses. But I said yes. Booked the trip myself. Picked the dates, the cabin, the rental car. Because I wanted her to feel safe. The weekend before we were set to go, she hosted a small gathering at our place. Wine, candles, Spotify playlists full of faux deep acoustic soul. Her therapist friend was there. So were two of her co-workers who thought she was a healing goddess. At one point, Mara raised a glass and said, I just want to appreciate Nate. He's really been showing up emotionally. I feel like he's finally learning to listen. They clapped, smiled at me like I was a student who'd finally stopped biting other kids. I just smiled back, said, thanks, everyone. Honestly, I owe it all to Mara. She taught me the value of reflection. She beamed. She had no idea I meant it literally. Because while they toasted my growth, I was syncing files to 3 continents and backing up a final master folder called Playback. Dinner was her idea, of course it was. She called it a milestone celebration. Said it was about acknowledging the progress we'd made as a couple. She invited her parents, her therapist friend, Lila, even her sister Jen, the same ones who'd laughed behind my back. I didn't object. I even made reservations at her favorite restaurant, the bougie kind with minimalist decor and wine that costs more than car repairs. She wore white. That smug, effortless white that screams purity. I'm proud of us, she whispered in the car, lacing her fingers through mine. I squeezed back. Me too. Once we were seated, and the appetizers were out, she raised her glass. I just want to thank you all for being part of this journey, she began, eyes glistening. Nate and I have grown so much. It hasn't been easy, but the result has been beautiful. Her dad clapped. Jen teared up. Lila gave me a fake little thumbs up. Then she turned to me. Do you want to say something, babe? I smiled. Took out my phone. Tapped Bluetooth. Connected to the restaurant's public speaker system, I'd called ahead. Said it was for a slideshow proposal. Instead, the speakers clicked, and Mara's voice filled the room. You just have to make them feel like they're failing emotionally. That's the trick. Once they're ashamed, you can get them to do anything. Silence. Then another. I swear, it's like training a golden retriever. And another. He still thinks I'm in therapy. I just keep giving him emotional homework. He eats it up. Her smile evaporated. Her face drained. The room froze. Her dad's fork clattered onto his plate. Jen looked like she wanted to be swallowed whole by the leather booth. Lila? She stood up and walked out, muttering, Jesus Christ. Mara stammered. Nate, what are you doing? This is private. This is manipulation, I said calmly. Gaslighting? Humiliation? I looked around. Just wanted everyone to hear what growth sounds like. She lunged for my phone. I slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside, divorce papers. Prenup violation. List of audio files. Printed transcripts. Her affair. Everything. I'll be staying at a hotel tonight, I said. My lawyer will be in touch. She didn't speak. Just stared. Mouth slightly open. Her parents didn't defend her. No one did. They didn't have to. Her voice had said it all. I checked into a hotel that night. Not a fancy one. Just clean, quiet, and free of Mara's voice echoing in the walls. By the next morning, her text messages started pouring in. Please talk to me. That wasn't fair. You ambushed me. You made me look insane. We can fix this if you just come home. I didn't reply. The silence said more than I ever could. By noon, she posted a vague Instagram story. A close-up of tea and a candle with the caption, "Sometimes people don't understand your healing process." And that's okay. By evening, the damage had spread. One of her co-workers, the guy who'd been at dinner, DM'd me privately. Said, I always thought she was a bit performative, but damn man, I didn't know it was like that. Her therapist friend deleted her comment from Mara's last post. Jen unfollowed her. Lila? She messaged me 2 days later to apologize. I laughed at you because I thought she was trying to help. I didn't realize she was using you as a script. Mara went quiet for about a week. Then, suddenly, I got served. A cease and desist letter from her lawyer, claiming I'd defamed her with edited recordings. I forwarded it to mine. He laughed. Brooks replied with a full evidence packet. Every clip, every transcript, GPS logs, calendar matches, screenshots. He even pre-highlighted the moments where she admitted to manipulation and gaslighting. She dropped the claim within 48 hours. Instead, her new strategy was damage control. She texted me again. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I was trying to get you to feel. You were just so numb. I didn't know what else to do. You recording me. That felt like betrayal. That last one stuck with me. Betrayal. From the woman who made my grief a group activity. Who turned my most vulnerable moments into her performance reel. Who told another man I was emotionally safe, but boring. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. We finalized the divorce in under 6 weeks. Thanks to the prenup clause and the documented infidelity, I kept everything. The condo, the car, the savings. She got her clothes, her yoga mat, and her curated collection of emotional growth books. Rumor has it she started seeing a new therapist. A real one this time. Good for her. Me? I bought noise-canceling headphones. Not because I'm avoiding people, but because I've learned the most dangerous words don't always come from shouting. Sometimes, the quietest voice in the room is the one planning your exit. She still tells people I snapped. Says I weaponized logic and couldn't handle emotional accountability. Maybe. Or maybe I just stopped letting her turn my silence into a punching bag. She moved cities after the divorce. Last I heard, she runs a women's empowerment circle. Talks about boundaries, trust, vulnerability. Meanwhile, I sleep like a stone. No more walking on eggshells in my own home. No more pretending that love means being dissected like a flawed patient. I don't need apologies. She taught me everything I needed to know through her own voice. Empathy? I've got plenty. Just not for people who mistake cruelty for growth.